Welcome to Australian Hunger. I am your host, Ben. On today's episode, interview with Nick Holmes from Bloodbath. Really great to talk to him. I actually talked to Greg McIntosh of Paradise Lost, who Nick Holmes is in Paradise Lost in addition to being in Bloodbath, and I'm going to collect all the, I'm going to catch them all. I've got to catch all the guys from the band, all the guys from Paradise Lost, and then I can win the championship. But we'll see how we go with that one. Before I get to the interview, sort of a really interesting yet tangential piece of news related to heavy metal. Metal Injection had an article sourced from an article about Taylor Swift's record contract that Vox had. And you may think, what does that have to do with heavy metal? Interesting, it does actually have a solid connection. So I'm going to quote from the article from Vox here. Swift has made a condition of her contract that if Universal Music Group sells its Spotify shares, the label will redistribute some of the money from that sale to all the artists it represents. Non-recoupable, meaning it won't count against their advances. It's a huge commitment from UMG. That, until Swift's deal, was far from assured. So UMG owns a 3.5% share stake in Spotify, estimated to be worth $850 million. Now, obviously, that's a really great victory to all those artists, and given that there are a number of metal bands that are on Sony, this is relevant to what I'm talking about. And some of those are Avenged Sevenfold, Five Finger Death Punch, Venom, Bullet for My Valentine, Atreyu, Electric Wizard, Prophets of Rage, Nine Inch Nails, Strike Anywhere, and Entheos. Good news all around. Taylor Swift, whether she was thinking personally or more in sort of a group sense, she's done a good deed here. UMG, as many other labels have done, might sell its shares in Spotify, thus generating that cash for those particular artists. But my main takeaway from this was, it's a bit fucked up that someone has that much power. Honestly, really, that's kind of scary that someone has the ability to have so much influence on the music industry in this particular way, as well as dictate how much money all those other artists are going to get. Because those artists definitely didn't have that power. They definitely didn't have the ability to make those demands in signing a contract. But Taylor Swift does. And this sort of goes to a lot of things. I'm not going to go into it in any detail. I just thought it was worth noting that, although a lot of the artists I tend to interview and recommend may not necessarily be part of big labels that would have both this much pull in the music industry and therefore generate that much kind of revenue to be notable, they're all subject to the way the industry operates, and these artists can clearly have such a big effect on the way they make money. And it's part of the larger issue that we have, where the systems we rely on have little accountability to both the artists that generate money from the system, as well as kind of the consumers who pay for their services. And I'm not saying I'm going to round this up in a nice bow, here's the problem, here's the solution, good. It's part of a much wider problem that I think only really political institutions have the ability to solve, because there's no real impetus from the organisations themselves, and there's not really that much impetus besides the goodwill from the big artists to make a change, because it's from these systems which push so much money to the top and are so interested in having the big artists being available and satisfying them. It's more of a goodwill situation, and that's not the way these things really need to be run. We really need to be distributing funds far more widely to artists, because Taylor Swift only makes so much music. She only generates so much happiness for people. There are so many other artists, and I'm obviously not necessarily talking about the artists that I'm interested in, but like more broadly, there's so many other artists which are generating happiness for people by the fact of their existence. So I just find it shocking that one artist has that much power, that much ability to dictate, and it's kind of a terrifying thing in our world. But onwards, interview I did with Nick Holmes of Bloodbath. A bit shorter than most of them do, because it's one of those unsolicited interviews which I talked a bit about. But really good chatting to him. Really interesting in light of the conversation I just had, and that will be out next week. A conversation with Lege, a band which does a lot of improvisation, a lot of jamming. Nick Holmes talking the fact that he doesn't think jamming kind of works for them as a band, and he's not really a big fan of that as a writing tool. Really interesting. It kind of demonstrates what you get from these conversations is really diverse opinions, and it kind of brings it forward to form some sort of understanding of what it means to be in a band and what it means to be a musician and all the kind of differing ways that actually manifests. The song I play in the middle of the interview is Bloodicide, and the song I play at the end is Chainsaw Lullabies. This is Nick Holmes from Bloodbath, and their album out now is The Arrow of Satan is Drawn. This album, when did you guys start working on it? You released your last album in 2014. When did you start working on this one?
We started, I think it was kind of recorded around January, February, March this year. I guess it was sort of worked on towards the end of last year. But I mean, the guys, everyone writes their own songs, so everyone just kind of goes away on their own, does their own little thing, then comes back. And I've collaborated with Anders on a couple of songs as well. But generally speaking, people kind of go away in a little corner, do their own thing, and then it's kind of recorded. And it's quite recorded in steps as well, because the drums were done first. Then quite a bit later, I did the vocals over rough scratch guitars, and then the guitars were done after me. So it's quite a staggered process, the recording situation with it.
That's interesting. How is it to sort of keep that all together for you guys?
I mean, it's when you got the internet, it's easy because you can just file share, and obviously with the chats as well, you're never that far away from somebody, so it's a lot. Gone are the days of having to meet up and jam in a room. And I mean, to be fair, from my experience, that's never been a particularly productive way of writing anyway. Sitting with someone in a room writing, I've never really liked that way of doing it anyway. So you can kind of ponder over things more and listen back and see if you're really into it or not. Then have another go at the next day if you don't like it. So it's the file sharing situation for me personally. Well, for most people I know, is a much more productive way of writing.
That's really interesting. So in this sort of modern day, where a lot of people like yourself kind of forced into that kind of environment, and then some people just choose it because of its convenience, it's kind of perhaps more productive for a lot of people.
Well, I mean, I've done it. I've worked that way with Paradise Lost for probably 2 decades now. I mean, it's I don't live that far away from Greg McIntosh. I could probably drive to his house. So, but I mean, it's just if someone sends you some music, you can initially think it's brilliant, and then perhaps the next day or two you might not like it as much, or vice versa. It's something you've done. So I think it's good to get something and then kind of really listen to it on your own and have your own, decide what you think. When you're with someone, it's always changes your opinion. You don't get the full effect after. I've never found it a good way of writing. The whole process of like jamming thing, I just don't get that. I never understood that, the concept of jamming personally, but each to their own, I guess. So
with you and Anders sort of working together, does he send you stuff that he's working on, then you go and put vocals over that, or how does it work between you guys?
It's pretty much like that. I mean, the full song's done. The whole song's done, and it's like, okay, here you go, and it's like you just sort of work out the vocal parts. I mean, on some of the songs he's done all the vocals and all the vocal parts. There's nothing to do on that, but maybe he might have a little part where he hasn't done anything on it. So it's just a case of just kind of doing the bits that are required, really. And I did the same with a couple of songs with Joachim, the new guitar player as well. There was 2 songs that I kind of co-wrote with him. The vocals. I was going to say the melody lines, but they're not really melodies, are they? So
You mentioned your new guitarist. How's he fitting into the band? He joined just this year, I think, or was it last year? When did he join? How's he fitting into the band?
Yeah, he sort of joined towards around the time we sort of like started recording. So the beginning of the year. I mean, we haven't done any concerts yet with the Orca. So we're touring at the end of this month, and that'll be his kind of debut with Bloodbath Live. But yeah, he wrote like I think it was 3 songs on the album that he wrote. So, but yeah, no, he's a great guy. It's the first time I met him, So it's yeah. He seems like he was from the band Craft as well, which they're a really cool band. So yeah, he's a nice guy.
With the vocals, the lyrics, do you write them for the band?
No, I write. I've written. I think I've done 3, maybe 4 songs. Just the vocals on this one. Like I said, I kind of swap over with Anders. Sometimes he writes some stuff, sometimes I write some stuff. Jonas, he writes all his songs. He writes the lyrics, the music, everything. So that's all that Jonas' songs are just completely his thing. I swap a little bit with Anders, and I've done also the same with Yoki as well. So yeah, it's a sort of whatever's required to get it done, So, but it's always good fun, So
that's really interesting. So how is it singing vocal parts, the lyrics that other people have written? Is it just smooth, or is it sort of adapting to them? How does that work for you?
It's okay. I mean, once I always record it. If they're already recorded of what I've got to sing, I always re-record them myself just so I can get used to the timing and everything, because you don't really understand the song that well until you actually sing it back like many times, and then it makes sense. It's for me personally, it's also a good way of learning the song as well, because if I record something and then I learn it as well. So and there is a lot of singing to learn on Bloodbath songs. So yeah, it's I quite enjoy it, really, because even if it is something you don't necessarily think works at first, you think, okay, well, I wouldn't have done that. But then when you play it enough times, and you think, oh yeah, this does work, And I know the guys really work a hell of a lot, put a lot into each song they write. So it's just a case of kind of adjusting yourself to someone else's vision, which is, like I said, at first sometimes you think, hang on, I'm not getting this timing, and then eventually think, yeah, I got it, And it's quite a nice feeling when you finally get what someone else's vision is. So yeah, no, it's always interesting to do that, because obviously with Paradise Lost, I've always kind of written all my own lyrics. So it's it's interesting to do it,
No, that's definitely really interesting. You with Bloodicide in particular, you had several guest vocalists on that track. Talk a little bit about how that came about, because mostly with guest vocalists they'll be maybe spread across the album. With this, you've got three guest vocalists on the single track, a real kind of tour de force of death metal vocalists.
Well, I mean, I know Carl Willitson, I know Jeff Walker pretty well. I've known him probably most of my adult life, really. I mean, it was just a case of we used Chris Reifert from Autopsy on the last song on the last album. And we just said, should we sort of give it a shot against someone else on this one? And obviously I know the guy. So it was pretty much the case of dropping them an email, So it was that simple. They could either say yes or no, but luckily they said yes. And then Anders asked John Walker from Cancer if he was up for it as well. So it was just a case of just what bit we wanted to do. It was a simple line each, It wasn't like particularly complicated or would take them days and days to record. So we just sort of said, "Oh, you're up for doing this," and it was quite a natural, pleasant thing. Really, it wasn't particularly, no one had. Again, a testament to the internet, because it was all done through the net, So it's just pretty simple to sort out,
One thing I really liked about this album, sort of additional to all the music, is the artwork. It's more subtle and in that way sort of unsettling than your average death metal cover art. How did that come about?
I think it's. I think it was Anders. He wanted to perhaps get like an old master, like the kind of album covers we used to like when we were kids. Really, it's that sort of style was used a hell of a lot when we were kind of teenagers growing up, and the kind of old master type, very dark, the kind of very dark kind of Giga type sort of artwork that like Celtic Frost used to use, the really dramatic stuff. We just sort of wanted perhaps a feel of that or an element of that. I mean, obviously other bands do it as well, but it's. But when we saw the finished artwork, we were quite wow, because it's quite disturbing, and it's kind of makes you think when you look at it. So we thought, yeah, that's really, and it's also not totally expected, I don't think, for Bloodbath to have a cover like that either. It's quite a different sort of style for them, really.
And the title for the album, The Arrow of Satan is Drawn, where does that come from? Is that a line from somewhere? Is that something you guys came up with?
There's a kind of line, a poem that's read out in one of, I can't remember which song it is, but it was originally, the line was the arrow of God or Jesus is drawn, I think. But I just changed it to Satan because I thought it was more fitting. And then Jonas said he just really liked that as a title, and we were like, oh, okay. And then it kind of just, once you get a title established, then it just sticks. You kind of grow into titles. Anything that sounds strange at first, if you live with it long enough, it works. And now I'm just totally used to it as a title.
Now, with you guys, sort of been playing death metal for a while, particularly the rest of the guys in the band. What is it about that kind of classic Swedish death metal band that keeps you guys playing?
I don't know. I mean, I think death metal was the thing that really kind of excited everyone. I'm a couple of years older than the other guys, but at the same time, when I was a teenager, I was thoroughly excited by death metal music. It was a very new thing at the time. I mean, now there's a billion bands out there, but when we, back in the sort of late 80s and mid 80s, it was a really new thing, and I think it just blew everyone away. And it kind of, anything that kind of strong is going to stay with you all your life, I think, really. I mean, you can kind of go off it, but you always come back to it, because it was always such a very important part of, particularly my teenage life. I was obsessed with death metal from kind of most of my teenage years. I were obsessed with it. So it's, but I mean, I guess, like I say, music you listen to from me being maybe 14 to 21 is the music that will probably stay with you all your life. When you get middle age, when you hear this old stuff, you still kind of just makes you think of being young, and it's quite nostalgic in a nice way. So I guess, that element's always going to be there, and when we were younger, it was death metal. For some people it might have been Duran Duran, but for us it was death metal, I guess.
One of the interesting things about your vocals is that for a while, like, you weren't doing death metal vocals during your career with Paradise Lost. You've sort of started doing them with Bloodbath, with Paradise Lost. What sort of brought you back to that kind of style of vocals?
Probably, well, a combination of what I just said in a way. I mean, like I say, it's you do. I didn't do it for so long. It was interesting to see if I could actually even do it again. I mean, When we'd already planned to perhaps go down that direction a bit more with Paradise Lost on this last album anyway. But then the guys asked me to join Bloodbath in between that, so it was just everything sort of kind of fit nicely into place. The style I do with Bloodbath is a lot more sort of intense than I do with PL because it's a lot slower. But it's just a case of, for now when you record albums, particularly in Paradise Lost case, it's just adding another string to the bow. Really, it's just if you can do that, it adds another atmosphere to the singing. And obviously with Bloodbath, it's got to be it's kind of like relentless singing all the way through. And but I've done it for 4 years now. I just kind of just do it now. I don't really think about it too much anymore. At first it was kind of weird, but because I hadn't done it for so long, but you soon get used to it. It's like putting on an old jacket, I used to do it when I was a teenager anyway, so it just sort of makes sense,
Like, more broadly speaking about the whole range of your vocals, what is it that keeps you as a vocalist? What, performing, recording, what is it that about interests you in doing that with your life?
I've done it for so long. There's really not. And I do enjoy doing it. I don't really ever think I don't want to do it. It's you can moan about touring, you can moan about being away, you can moan about not being able to shower for 3 days, or whatever. There's little kind of bumps in the road that. But I never actually ever think I don't want to do this. And that's the thing. I've got friends in jobs where they really don't want to do their job, and I've never ever felt that feeling. So. And I feel very lucky and grateful that I can do it all these years. So, and I really try not to take it for granted, and especially as you get older as well. But you've got to stay as healthy as you can, and then it takes it out of you. Touring is hard work, But like I said, I just wouldn't want to do any. I couldn't think of anything else I would rather do, and that keeps me going, I guess.
What is it in particular about touring that you like? Like, is it some sort of feeling that you get from being on stage? What is it that you really enjoy?
The concert's fantastic. It's everything else around the concert is usually a bit of a drag. There's the travel. You're never out of airports. It sounds, when you say people don't travel much, they kind of don't grasp that concept. But the amount of time you're stuck in airports is just insane. And then if you miss flights, you've got like 12-hour layovers, and it's just there's so many elements that are a negative aspect of it. But the actual concert is fantastic. That's the best part of the day. But it's getting to the concert that can be a bit of a drag sometimes. And it's but like I said, I've done it for so many years. I just take it in my stride, And I think everyone else does this for a living. You expect to have delays, you expect to have inconvenience. But at the end of the day, you do the concert, and that's what you're there for. You're not there for any other reason. So you just got to do your gig and then get on with your next one,
Now, as we've mentioned, you're obviously part of Paradise Lost and Bloodbath. So you've been in Paradise Lost for a long, long time. What was it that made you want to join Bloodbath? Was it that you had free time in your hands? Was there certain things you wanted to explore beyond Paradise Lost? What was it?
Initially the guys asked me if I wanted to join, and I'd never been asked to join another band or sort of contribute to anything particularly outside Paradise Lost. I was very flattered. I was aware of Bloodbath, obviously, but I was quite shocked because I wasn't actually really doing the whole death metal voice at that point with PL. But we knew we were friends anyway. We toured with Catatonia quite a lot, so So yeah, they asked me. I was, very flattered and give it a bit of thought, and then decided to go for it. This was like 4 years ago. I can't believe how fast it's gone. It's gone really, really quick. I still feel like I've only just kind of joined in a way. It's sort of strange, but yeah, it was. I think the fact we were all previously friends really helped as well. It's nice to work with people you already know and you already like. That's quite a big thing for me as well. But obviously they've done some great music as well. So everything just sort of fit into place, I think.
Last question. Is there anything you're listening to at the moment in particular?
No. No, nothing. I've been sort of touring a lot the last couple of months, so I've come home and I've got like 3 weeks off, and I haven't played any music in 3 weeks, apart from perhaps Glenn Campbell's Wichita Lineman. That's the only song I played in 3 weeks. So no, not really.
Is there anything else you do, like in the absence of that? Watch movies, TV shows, listen to podcasts, anything like that? Read some books. Is there anything that
I watched? I watched countless films. I watched hundreds of films a year. I mean, last night I watched The Nun, actually. Which I thought was quite sort of, it was okay. It was kind of like a teenage horror film, but I quite enjoyed it. You know, it was all right. But I mean, I do watch a hell of a lot of movies. I'm a big horror film fan, but I watch so many I can't remember what I've seen. You know, so I get through them. That's for sure.
Chainsaw Lullaby by Bloodbath from the album The Arrow of Satan is Drawn. And before that we heard, in the middle of the interview, Bloodicide. A lot of blood going on there. Thanks to Nick Holmes again for chatting to me. I really appreciate his time. Recommendation before I finish off this episode, and it's going to be a bit more simpler one than I've done in the past. This is for a band called Serocs, their album The Phobos Deimos Suite. Very interesting title, I'm not quite sure what it means, but basically this is just a really solid technical death metal release, which kind of emulates the sound from the early 2000s, sort of where it matured a bit beyond the death metal had kind of been able to find a bit more cleaner production in a sort of way, and so they were able to put out a really fast technical record which also sounded really great. That was kind of emerging in the 2000s. It sort of starts fast, doesn't slow down, and that's all you really need to know about this record. I think it was just really solidly done. I may have talked a lot to Sumeru and Shallow Grave about issues with saturated scenes, and I think techno death metal, whether you're talking maybe about more of the 2000 sounds or more of the sound that's kind of going around now, is definitely oversaturated. But ultimately, if you're doing well, there's nothing wrong with that. Even if the scene is saturated, if you're doing something really good and it sounds really great, it cuts through. I'm going to be back later in the week with an interview with Sylvain, one of my favourite interviews that I've done. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode and hope you join me later in the week. Bye.